where we are, it's like we're uh, subjects in a test tube, or subjects under glass. It's like we're a museum display, really. Uh, we're we're just these exotic uh, communards, for everyone to look at, as if we were there for their amusement.
Well, I'm actually a big fan of the Communards, the 80s pop band, Jimmy Somerville. So, I mean,
Nice.
uh, don't, don't get me started.
That's
great,
You
great
drop a
music.
lot of references, and that's a good one.
Yeah, no, he's that's true. Speaking, of our fellow travelers and our communards and our political talking heads, um, we got a lot to talk about today. But wasn't there some stuff that you were going to
We
go
do.
into about?
Yeah. I wanted to give a shout out to MLK Day, and just for a couple of reasons, I think. Um, so the the sort of left wing of celebrations and recognitions around MLK Day, every year, Jacobin and other publications always share their articles talking about how MLK was a socialist, became a socialist late in his life, or at least an anti capitalist. He's famous for phrases like, you can call it democratic socialism or just call it democracy, but we have to find more just ways to distribute wealth. He became a fierce critic of capitalism, and all of that's really important. But I, I always come back to his last speech, his Been to the Mountaintop speech, which he gave in conjunction with the sanitation workers' strike in Memphis. And I always come back to this phrase, dangerous unselfishness. Let us develop a kind of dangerous unselfishness. So this is Martin Luther King Jr. Uh, in his very last speech, talks about a dangerous unselfishness, and he talks about the Good Samaritan story, and he kind of retells the Good Samaritan story. And for those who are shaking off the trauma of their Christian upbringing or didn't have a chance to really learn about the Good Samaritan story, of course, there is uh, a guy who had fallen in with a bad crowd, but he was sick. He was injured, on the and helpless on the side of the road, and a bunch of people, a Pharisee passed him, or a Levite passed him, and a priest passed him, and they don't help him. And then a guy from a man from another country, or a man from another nation, stops and helps him. And MLK in his speech says, it might be that the people that didn't help him because they were scared. This was on the road to between Jerusalem and Jericho. It is a road that goes from 2,500 feet above sea level to, 1,200 feet above sea level to about 2,200 feet below sea level. It's this rough road. It's a dangerous road, and there might have been bandits on the road. And so it might be that people the uh, uh, didn't help the man because they were frightened. And he kind of uses this as a, a way to lead into this idea of unselfishness is dangerous, and true community and true service can be dangerous. You're risking a lot. And I'm just reflecting on the times that I individually have failed to practice dangerous unselfishness, and the times that our commune has failed to practice dangerous unselfishness and instead has given into our own fears, including, quite a bit. I mean, that's happened repeatedly, I think, for me personally, and it's happened in groups that I've been a part of collectively. And so it's an aspiration and kind of a goal that I have this year to live more dangerously, and in doing that, meaning also live more dangerously in the love that I practice for other people. So I wanted to, wish everyone a blessed and thoughtful MLK Day, and to recognize that part of, one of the last big speech that he ever gave. He's talking about unselfishness as a dangerous thing, and it's dangerous because if we truly lived it, our the world would transform in these unbelievable ways that would be very unpleasant to the powerful. And so I would hope that we want to keep practicing that. So that's my wish for this day, which is a holiday in honor of Martin Luther King Jr., who was a democratic socialist, and who, like Malcolm X and like so many other civil rights leaders, late in life realized that the problem was also our economic system. So that's my that's my 2 cents about that. Um, Also, wanted to point out that, and this is a little more related to what we wanted to talk about today, and I'm here. This is the Solidarity House Morning Show. You can support us at patreon.com/Solidarity House, where you will also find our podcasts. You can find our podcasts on Spotify and Podbean, and Apple as well, Solidarity House Cooperative. And the other thing that I wanted to point out was that the military, and I think this is a headline that came out yesterday, but the Defense Department is afraid right now that the incursions, or I guess the infiltration into the military, of white supremacists and other extreme right wing groups is so pervasive and so big that they are afraid that it's too big and too surreptitious for them to do anything about it and to prevent something bad from happening on Inauguration Day. And I don't know where the DoD has been for the last 10, 15 years or even more, as reports have been accumulating about fascist incursion into the military. And some would say, it's easy. It's easier to get into some institutions than others, and the military is one of them. But here we are.
Well, first off, let me say thank you. It's good to be here to discuss that and many other issues. I do want to acknowledge MLK Day. It's Dr. King, the Reverend Dr. King was really good at, we talk about these interconnectivity, and how you have to look at intersectionality and how everything comes together. And I think he was using intersectionality as a concept way before it became popular with the Squad or Democrats during the 2018 debates, and talking about the economics and being unselfish, and there at the same time with the praxis of helping those in need of organizational and other motivations, the sanitation workers union, that he was absolutely engaged in that. As far as racists in the military, yeah, where have they been? And I would argue since the 90s, that there's been an issue with racism, in the military. And, you know, part of it, the reason why the military was not integrated via congressional action. That was done as an executive order by, was it Eisenhower? And it forced the integration of the military, or was it Truman? I forget, one of those two guys. And
I think it was Truman.
that,
We're terrible
yeah,
at
so
history.
anyway, I'm pretty sure it was. And that made it so that, it changed the dynamic within the military. And for a time there, viewed actual military service as a means to get to the dream after that, because they were treated with respect in the military by rank. That's just the way it was. You had an opportunity to rise up, even as though there was still racism there. And a large percentage, a much more larger percentage of the US military used to be from African American and smaller demographics and minorities in the United States. Because of that, you'd have like a 20 to 25% of the military was African American or other non-white ethnicities, and yet they only represented maybe 13% of the population at the time. Numbers. But yeah, where the military hasn't been paying attention to this, and 2001 made it worse because it was a brown enemy yet again, and we focused all of our attention on foreign threats, and the military wasn't looking inside of itself while it was doing that. It was too busy trying to gear up and fight a war that didn't need to be fought in Iraq, and so it wasn't paying attention, I guess, and it didn't help that we had another enemy of color, so it makes it easy to not look at, hey, how your people of color are being treated within your own ranks.
Well, and there was widespread resistance among various ruling class circles to the attempt to even report on the infiltration of white supremacists in the military, in other agencies, including in policing. And there's extensive research, that is conducted throughout that time, that the Bush administration pushes back against, that the Obama administration is not particularly interested in, and then of course the Trump administration is like, wait, we feel personally insulted by your expose of white supremacy, so we won't allow it either.
Right. Yeah.
Why are you attacking us? And so here we are, and it is this sort of, it's the sort of Spider-Man facing Spider-Man meme in some ways, and it also is the problem. Seems to be that we have, that the we're in this period of transition, supposedly of transition, but it's like a bunch of the people in positions of power are Trumpian toad fascists, and so they are literally running interference against the neoliberals and slightly less bloodthirsty branch of the wing of the government that represents the Biden administration. And in the midst of all of this, there is this fear on the part of the DoD that their own personnel, that a bunch of their own personnel are going to turn coat. And so they vetted everyone in the National Guard. And somebody on Twitter was like, that's stupid. No one in the National Guard is going to risk their, going to jail for life to do something like that. But if you understand this as the incursion into the various branches of the military by fanatics who would die or would go to prison for life for this cause, for the cause of propping up or even just disrupting a Biden administration and propping up the movement, the fascist movement that is represented by the Trump administration, then people would definitely be willing to do that. So anyway, it's here we are, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are. We're stuck, and just to that point, Dylan Roof didn't get into the U.S. military or didn't join the U.S. military, but he still did something that is going to imprison him for life, and he may very well get the death penalty. I don't know, at some point in time. So that there are absolutely racist fascists out there that will go all the way, and to say that some of them haven't been able to lie their way through the psych evals that they put soldiers through. I mean, they do a psych eval. I don't like that. They try to not hire really unstable or fascist in beings, but it's not enough, and I argue it's probably not done very well. But so there are a lot of people, I'm sure, who were able to get past the psych eval and or were already in the military and then became radicalized. And we've seen that may very well be the case. And it's not all of these people who are supposed to be swearing an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. If you're an officer in the U.S. military, you swear your oath to the Constitution. It's a little different for the enlisted folk. Their oath is to the laws and obey the commands of, legitimately given commands from officers and such. But as an officer in the U.S. military, you are supposed to oath to the Constitution. And when we saw either retired or that may very well have been some active duty folks at
Mm-hmm.
the most recent insurrection, it's disturbing. And I think one thing, if we were going to try and get a handle on this, is there was at least one lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. And when you retire, you still are
You're
part of
still
the
subject
military.
to, yeah,
They can call
exactly.
you back up. You're still subject to the UCMJ. So I think one thing that needs to be done is this zip tie carrying wackadoodle needs to be recalled, ranked down to private, no pension, and then that's it.
Um,
Military
you know,
has the capacity.
I am no fan of the carceral state, and I'm no fan of the coercive elements of the military. I mean, I think that there's some ways in which we could, um, you know, do some things regimentally in the service of humanity, that would that would loosely resemble what the military does in some instances. But I'm not a big fan of the guns, at least in their hands. But we are in really strange times, and it is in the context of these strange times that Liz Cheney, our own Liz Cheney, as Wyomingites would say, has emerged as the latest hero of the resistance, the latest member of the progressive anti-Trump coalition. I'm saying with a little bit of sarcasm there, uh, and has become a hero to even a lot of members of the Wyoming Democratic Party now, because of her, and really just and a consistent. She's consistently criticized the Trump administration. Now she's voted to impeach, and I think that's what you had kind of come on here to talk about a little bit.
Well, yes, absolutely. And I mean, I just want to say that Liz Cheney is not a hero. Okay, and Mitt Romney isn't a hero. I don't know what it is with these people on the left that Republican does the right thing that they're supposed to do according to law, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh my God! Oh, I'm going to warn you. There's such good people. Mitt Romney. Oh, Liz Cheney. Oh, and it's like you're doing the bare minimum,
the
folks.
The bar
Okay,
is just so
voting
low,
to
I think,
because the president incited a violent insurrection is not heroic. Okay, your own Liz Cheney butt was under fire in that House chamber. So I don't see this as like some big revelatory, ooh, whatever. I see this as the barest minimum of doing your job. Okay.
Well, I know you
That
want to
having
talk
been
more about
said,
it, but is it also that she's going to run for president? Because Liz Cheney's going to fucking run for
well,
president.
I absolutely believe that she is. There was a book. I was the author Stuart Stevens actually discusses that as a possibility. This obviously happened before the insurrection, but that she has her eyes on higher office, and Machiavelli, Darth Vader, Cheney. It's not like she's not going to do that. Okay, be 58 in 2020, 57 will be the first a ticket unless steps down and Kamala gets the Democratic ticket. But I really think that's what she's aiming for, and she believes that Trumpism is a fever dream, and I don't think that she understands that the Republican Party has been so bankrupt and hollow for the past at least 40 years of not actually believing it's fiscal conservatism and all those things and social. And so all it is angry now, a bunch of angry, pissed off white guys that are pissed because they're no longer the majority and they're soon to lose their capacity electorally to maintain that majority. So they vote for the loudest racist in the room. And that's what happened.
So
And
is the Cheney kind of dream and is sort of the anti-Trump dream and the Lincoln Project dream, is this that we can have conservatism without the kind of, this sort of gangster fascism of the Trump administration, that we can do that. And and this is even I feel like this is even a dream of the Biden administration, right? Or of Biden himself, because he's like, we need Republicans, and I love Republicans. And so what they're talking about is that you can have Reaganism without Trumpism.
yeah, but I'm sorry. Reagan planted the seeds, the Southern strategy, launching his campaign in Philadelphia or in Mississippi. In what was the town? Was it Philadelphia? Yeah,
I thought it was Philadelphia, Mississippi,
yeah,
right?
Philadelphia, Mississippi. I knew I was right. The Southern strategy, all of those things. No, I don't think what the Republican Party has metastasized into Trump. And those cancerous cells were seeded by Ronald Reagan, and that's going all the way back to the 60s. When Black Panther
Mm-hmm.
activists started showing up with guns and in rallies and openly carrying, all of a sudden gun control laws were a viable thing in California. But it wasn't until the black folks showed up with guns.
Uh-huh. And
So, and
well,
that
yeah,
was
and
Reagan
Barry
as governor.
Goldwater, and I was going to say too, the 1971 Powell memo, before Lewis Powell was a justice for the Supreme Court. He was a corporate lawyer, and he published this memo saying that there needs to be this major right-wing offensive. But of course, he again was, I think, part of this, this sort of William F. Buckley kind of conservatism that said, well, we can do all this. We can suppress people. We can, we and they didn't necessarily contemplate a populism, a right-wing populism coming up that is a result of, in some ways, capitalism's failure to deliver for people, and so this widespread alienation, but not just impoverishment, but like also just the several generations of propaganda saying that there is no such thing as public responsibility or public morality, that everything is private, that everything is, and which just collapses into this model of brute strength. And then you have a politician like Trump who's like, I like strong people, I don't like weak people. And that becomes the entire doctrine of Trumpism. Um, and politicians like Cheney kind of want to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah, and when you're talking about Liz Cheney, you also have to talk about some of the folks on the other side of that that are in the sedition caucus, like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley. They're both trying to, they believe that Trumpism is the thing of the future. They believe that that is the Republican Party. And Liz ostensibly believes that no, the more established conservatives are actually going to come back, that after Trump is no longer in office, his influence will eventually recede. And like a wave in a cesspool. And I think that that's what she's trying to do. And the question is she going to run for president, or is she trying to be the first Republican female Speaker of the House? That there's possibly that, but with Dick Cheney as dad, I would imagine she's probably shooting for the moon and going for the presidency. And she stands up and she
He's going to
gives
run
this
for president.
rousing statement about, this is insurrection, it's unacceptable, this is a vote of conscience, we have to impeach. And with Liz and all of the other folks, I just want to say to you, I don't care. Yay, you're right, but you still are supporting tax cuts that go to the top 1% who have literally made doubled their income during this pandemic.
You're
Jeff
still death
Bezos is so
merchants.
fucking rich right now.
You're still death merchants. You're still making, you know,
Yeah.
collecting residual payments on death, and so it really is one of those. We can't have all of these immediate manifestations of the violence of the system. We have to scale it back so that we can have the managed violence of the system. And unfortunately, I think in its effort to, maybe understandably retreat from Trumpism, I feel like the Democratic Party is too often uh, aiding and abetting that same sort of thing. What we really need is managed violence. That's better than uh, unmanaged violence, which is probably objectively true, but that occurs in a context of saying, well, there's an even better way to look at this, which is to end the hierarchical systems that produce Trumpism altogether. But in order to do that, we're cutting into a lot of other people's privileges. And here's another example of this. One would suspect that there would be a number of reforms enacted to the executive branch in terms of curtailing executive powers after we've seen sort of the excess of those executive powers used by this outgoing administration. But I'm betting that that's not going to happen because that's going to implicate future presidential powers of centrist democratic administrations. And similarly, I don't think that any of these people are going to go to jail because to prosecute them would implicate future executives, personnel who might go, either close to those lines or over those lines similarly. So I'm cynical about the effort by anyone to scale anything back on this, and it makes me feel like Cheney's posturing is self-serving and is also almost a diversion from the causes of Trumpism, of the causes and the things that got us here.
Well, and well, first off, just let me say that Barack Obama was responsible for more drone strikes, I think, than George Bush was at all, and that was his preferred method. Extrajudicial killing of American citizens on foreign soil with a drone strike. That was right up Obama's alley. I mean, So the idea that Joe Biden wants to restrict his authorities now? The fuck no. He wants to throw some drone strikes here and there. Let's
Um,
not let's not
yeah.
forget about that.
To be fair, Trump greatly intensified drone strikes, and
Oh, okay.
I don't want to I don't want to make the mistake. We're not. This is not a big equivalency argument.
No, no, no.
Um, this is a root cause. To me, this is a root cause argument. It's not an equivalency argument. Uh, the Trump administration was the worst, and that excess is uh, a feature, not a bug, of bourgeois politics, of which the Democratic Party and what we would now call moderate Republicans, like Liz Cheney, we're now calling Liz Cheney a moderate Republican, is also a part of that entire spectrum. And so I think that to me is the important takeaway from that is, and it's almost as if Trumpism is this lesson that can be used to club folks who are asking those types of questions, those kinds of questions of how did we get here? It's like, don't ask that question, because asking that question is what got us here, is really the answer that they're giving.
Well, and I'm not trying to argue equivalency. What I'm saying, I'm arguing consistency.
Right, right.
That there's that each president has enjoyed an expansion of their power, unless his power up to now, his power. Each president has enjoyed that and has not really sought to give that back. And to be fair, Congress hasn't tried to take it back, because Congress gave away a lot of this authority because it didn't want to have to deal with the political fallout of some of these decisions that they gave the executive the authority to do. And so, it's also partly Congress's to blame. Trumpism is the intersectionality of all these different things. And it's like Monty Burns, of The Simpsons. The only reason that Mr. Burns is still alive is because of all the diseases that he has in his body actually are in perfect counterindication to each other, and that so therefore they're fighting each other, and that's the only reason Mr. Burns is still alive. And I think that
Wow. What a great metaphor for bourgeois politics.
yes, exactly. There are so many diseases in this system that allow it to continue. You've got the racism, you've got the raw capitalist, the predatory capitalism. You've got a dumbing down of our society. Specifically undercutting and defunding education at the federal level, for instance. You've got so many other things. Oh, and climate change is a complete clusterfuck on top of all of this. It's like a frosting over the earth cake. And so we are stuck with all of these diseases, and that's what helps keep bourgeois politics moving. Because if you try to address this, well, then this will blow up in your face. And if you don't do that, and you're like, so trying to get our arms around it is a difficult and impossible task. Then the question becomes, who do we turn to and rely on to help us get there? And if you listen to the mooch, Steve Scaramucci, the first name was Steve, yeah, Scaramucci, the 10-day communications director, he keeps telling us that we need to leave an off-ramp for those Republicans who finally come to their senses. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, dude, this is the last off-ramp before hell. Okay. This is the last exit. Next exit is 666 hell.
Last chance. Well, it reminds me of the old transitional justice arguments around the debates over the International Criminal Court, when when the International Criminal Court was being created. A lot of people were like, well, we need mechanisms for these despots to get out of power and know that they're not going to be prosecuted. Otherwise, they will never leave. And so I feel like that dialogue also is part of this dialogue, and it really is in the so for example, articles in the Wall Street Journal or op-eds in the Wall Street Journal saying, yeah, we should impeach Trump and then immediately pardon him. Or we should, or we, other sources saying, well, we shouldn't do any of this. We shouldn't take any action against Trumpism or white supremacy because that will make Trumpism and white supremacy more angry. And it's all of these weird. So there's all of these kind of strange debates going on about it. And in the meantime, what I would suggest for folks who are watching is that we're actually going to have some pretty good conversations about other stuff this week that is configurally related to how we got here. So we're going to be throughout the live stream this week. Most of the time, I think is going to start at 10 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock. But we're going to be talking more. We're going to be circling back to a thing that Sean and I did a couple of weeks ago on Marxism in 20 minutes. And there's people have had some questions about that. We're going to be talking about capitalism and hiring practices. Jan is going to be on talking about that later this week. We're going to be talking, I think we're going to be talking a little bit about a book by Jay Sakai called Settlers, which is a very controversial book on the left. So I think we're going to be doing a little bit of talking about that. And we're going to be circling back into, or we're going to be kind of pulling back into some radical politics as an antidote to the kind of faux radicalism of everyone sort of lining up against this outgoing administration, but lining up from a framework of wanting to preserve the existing order rather than dismantling and deconstructing the existing order. So we're going to be the alternative to that. So thank you, Antifa. Did you have anything to add as we wrap up about Liz Cheney joining the resistance?
Well, let me just say this. I don't want Liz Cheney behind me in the resistance with a loaded gun, okay? I'm afraid I might get fragged if she was. Just a few points. The Republican Party of Wyoming has received an overwhelming number of calls talking about how much they hate Liz Cheney's decision, which, good for them. But mostly because they're so pro-Trump. I cannot help but believe this is a crass political decision that's being made in order for her to advance her political career. And I more than anything want to dispel this notion that she is some sort of hero, that she's not. Voting against an insurrectionist is the bare minimum. I mean, really, that's like the bare minimum.
And one gets the feeling that she just doesn't like this particular insurrection.
Yeah, you do get that feeling that if it was her at the head of it,
if it was a right-wing insurrection in some other country,
oh yeah,
she would be, absolutely delighted about that.
She would own shares in whatever company was getting in there to get whatever resource was going to be extracted from that country.
Yeah, exactly. That would substantially increase her bottom line.
Precisely. So Liz is not a hero, as far as I'm concerned. And I want everybody who's like, I want the left to get over this infatuation with people on the right who finally say the most obvious thing ever, and do the right thing, and treating them like they're some kind of hero. It's like, yeah, you're not supposed to rob banks. Don't push the old ladies into oncoming traffic. That's shit that you're not supposed to do. I shouldn't have to give you a gold star because you didn't go on a murdering spree. That's not the way this shit works. Okay? Just because you didn't rob the bank doesn't mean that you deserve a Medal of Freedom. That's not right. So get over it, the people on the left. Get over your infatuation with these guys on the right and gals on the right who are just barely doing the right thing. And that's And I think that's where I want to end this morning's conversation.
From a deep well at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, our guest, Antifa, talking about um, the giving a more balanced account of Liz Cheney's uh, ongoing assaults against the Trump administration and the outgoing Trump administration. In all seriousness, everyone have a good week. Happy MLK Day. Do keep listening, and you can also check out all of our other media stuff at patreon.com/Solidarity House. You can also check us out on Podbean and Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts. I think we're on a few other lesser known services as well. You can always find us here on Facebook at Solidarity House Cooperative, House Solidarity on Twitter. We also have a YouTube channel that we never go to, so we have like 2 subscribers, and someone was giving us shit about that the other day. Happy week, everyone. Stay safe, stay together, and hopefully be a better week even next week. So thank you so
MLK
much.
Day, fight the power.